Hi, my name's Angela. I'm married to Glenn, who is vicar of the North Wakefield Benefice and in a lovely part of West Yorkshire. That's really enjoying the sunshine today. We've got a beautiful day today. I thought I might offer some reflections really to help us become more mindful and perhaps introduce some strategies or some activities that will help us feel perhaps a bit more calm and able to cope with the anxieties and the worries that we have facing us at these really extraordinary, difficult times. I'm an adult education tutor at Wakefield in mindfulness, an introduction to mindfulness, and I also do parenting strategies as well. So why mindfulness and why now? It's obviously something that's been really in the news a lot in the past few years, growing in popularity throughout schools, throughout businesses, lots of money being pumped into it. But why today and why right now? We are suffering a time of great anxiety and great stress, and one of the key benefits of mindfulness is that it helps reduce anxiety and it helps reduce stress. And there are lots of studies out there which you can verify through scientific journals, etc., about the benefits of mindfulness, actually improving things like your immune system, encouraging your immune system, and helping you be able to reduce your anxiety and therefore all the benefits that you have when you reduce stress. Now, obviously, today and the time that we're facing is hugely stressful. And so something about paying kind attention to ourselves at this moment in time, I think is a really valuable thing and helpful thing to perhaps rediscover or discover in a deeper way. Studies have shown, I don't know if it's Cornell or Stanford, one of those big universities in America, and I don't quite know how they've worked this out, but they reckon that 40% or 47% of our normal waking time we actually spend mind wandering or just daydreaming or thinking ahead or thinking of the past. And so we're living in our heads 47% of the time. That's only half the time during the day. And mindfulness is about helping us capture that right here, that right now sense of the present moment. In fact, Christians have often called it the sacrament of the present moment. How important it is to be in tune with ourselves right here and right now. Studies have shown that just adopting these activities, if you like to call them that, for just 10 minutes a day can have a very powerful effect on our well-being. It's based a lot on sensory awareness. It's based a lot on being in touch with our breathing and how we're able to be aware of how our body stores stress and how we're aware of some of the automatic things that come into our minds and how we just run down those rabbit holes of stress and anxious thoughts. And in fact, mindfulness gives us a tool to be able to put those thoughts to one side and just say, that's interesting. No, I'm not going to follow that. Or, oh, I'm aware I must be quite anxious quite now. It's a process that takes practice. It's no good just listening to this once and thinking, well, that sounds okay. But actually, it's about what you do with it, really. So I'm going to introduce something really simple today, and it's based on a sense of touch. I'm using this really good book, which is called How to Be a Mindful Christian by Sally Welsh. There we go. She's a parish priest in the Diocese of Oxford. And the reason why I've chosen this one this morning, it was helping me think about the government strictures on encourages to hand wash. So I'm suggesting that we might adopt this hand washing technique alongside our normal precautionary measures, not instead of, just alongside. And we know that at this time of isolation, that sense of touch is something that we'll miss quite a lot right now. Not being able to hug and hold and be in contact with those who we love if we're in isolation or if they're in another country even, as my daughter's now in Denmark and I can't just reach out and touch her and give her a hug. So the sense of touch is one that's quite precious right now. For those of you who have children, or for those of you who are particularly anxious, one simple thing which they use in schools quite a lot for children who find the stress of normal schooling quite difficult, and it's called the starfish technique, and it's to help us get in touch with our breathing. Because when we breathe quicker, we have shallower breaths, so the oxygenated blood's not going through our body the same, and we're not able to take in things, and we find it hard to calm down. So all the adrenaline and the cortisol and all those stress hormones, stress chemicals are running free throughout our body. So this way of calming ourselves down is involving the way of deep breathing, which is a real pillar of mindfulness. So for children or for yourselves, the starfish technique is that you just run your finger up and down an outstretched palm, and each time you do it, you take in a breath. So you breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out. So the sensory feel of it is really special, is really sweet. But also, the more that you do it, the slower that you go around, the slower it calms down your breathing. And that's really beneficial. It really is. So that's a child's technique called the starfish technique. There's loads of things on the web if you're interested. Just type in mindfulness activities for children and you'll find loads. And even for adults, there's so many helps there out on the web, on Facebook as well. So there's loads of things out there. But I'm just going to read this out for you, and it's a story from the Old Testament, and it's based on the idea of touch. And there's some interesting reflections that Sally makes at the end. It's taken from 2 Kings, and it's the story of Naaman, who was the host of the king of Syria, who was a great man and a master, very honourable, because by him the Lord had given him deliverance unto Syria. So he was actually running amok, if you like, over Israel. He was also a mighty man in valour, but he was also a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away the captive out of the land of Israel, a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said to her mistress, Would God my Lord were ever to visit the prophet that is in Samaria, he would recover him of his leprosy. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariot and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a message unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away, and said, Behold, I thought he would surely come out to me, and stand, and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike a hand over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all these waters of Israel? May I not wash in them, and be clean? So he turned and went away in rage. And his servants came near, and spake unto him, and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee to do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? So Naaman went down, and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, and according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came out like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. So Sally's reflection, which is really fascinating, goes like this. It might appear that Naaman had everything anyone could wish for. Powerful man, skilled at his job, possessing the confidence for those for whom he worked. He was married, he was wealthy, and he appeared to have very few character flaws. All would have been well, except for the fact that he was stricken with the appalling, disfiguring, and life-destroying disease of leprosy. And so he was condemned to a lingering death, isolated from those he loved, shunned by all. But all is not lost, for he discovers the whereabouts of someone who might cure him, through the words of a slave girl captured by the Syrians. Naaman shows his desperation for a cure, in that he was prepared to act on the words of the most insignificant member of his household, that little maid. And even if they could hold out the slightest chance of a cure, he was prepared to sink that low, really. So Naaman goes to Elisha, but he is snubbed quite severely. Naaman, man of great stature, had already lowered himself to take on board the advice of this little girl, this little maid, and then going to Elisha and not being able to be met by him, it just didn't fit well with him. So even then Elisha does not go out to meet him, but sends a messenger with instructions for Naaman's cure. This is the final straw for Naaman. And he just says, that's it, I'm not going to do it. He cannot believe that he'd been treated like this. With his social, economic standing, with such a disease of such magnitude, and he'd probably need a really difficult, expensive, complicated cure. Surely not just to go and wash in the River Jordan. This arrogance, as Sally says, nearly proves his undoing. But he is rescued once again by servants, and he submits to the indignity of bathing in the muddy River Jordan rather than the great rivers of the Euphrates, and mentioned earlier. Naaman nearly missed out on a cure, on the chance of wholeness, because he initially failed to realise that it is through the small things, the ordinary acts of daily life, undertaken in obedience to God, that God can accomplish great things with us and through us. They may not always be the great things that we would have chosen or what we might have expected, but if we're faithful and prayerful and trust right up to the 7th immersion, then we will indeed be healed. Now, the exercise that Sally suggests is something that's really common in mindfulness activities, and it's about really feeling and being aware of that sense of touch. So the exercise goes as this. One of the greatest gifts of the natural world is that of water, and we are fortunate in this part of the world that we have unlimited access to clean running water. At the end of the day, set aside some time to wash your hands slowly and mindfully. Prepare the space beforehand, laying out your fluffiest of clean towels and your smelliest of smelly, lovely soap, and allow the water to run into the basin, and notice how it sparkles and flows and dances as it comes out the tap. And when the basin is full, immerse your hands slowly, feeling the sensation of water on your skin, and wash your hands slowly and carefully, noticing the bubbles of soap and the feeling of your hands rubbing against each other. Become aware of each finger as you turn in turn as you wash it clean. Remember Naaman washing away the disease of leprosy. Just realised I had the book in front of the mirror. Oh no, that's okay. And remember Naaman, how he must have felt as his skin grew whole again. This is the really interesting part. You might think of some of the words and actions of your day and the words and actions of others that should not cling to you but should be washed away. Empty the water, rinse the basin, and let the dirty water disappear, and then dry your hands slowly, carefully, and mindfully. It's the washing away and being aware of the senses of the smell of the soap, the temperature of the water, the sensual nature of the bubbles and the soap. And it's a really interesting way of observing the government's precautionary measures alongside. But this is just something to help us get in touch with our sense of touch and to do an ordinary activity very mindfully. What struck me when I read Sally's book, in her chapter on this, was with mindfulness. You hear about it and you think, oh, that's really simple. That can't possibly be the answer. Just deep breathing, 3 deep breaths, that can't be that useful. We want to go to the gym. We want to buy all the latest stuff. We want to invest in a really expensive cure or spend lots of complicated time doing loads of exercises. And in fact, mindfulness at its heart is very simple. just like bathing 7 times in the River Jordan. So please do try it, 10 minutes each day. And each day I'll come and try and give some ideas or some references, if you like, to other activities that you can do. And just take 10 minutes a day to be a mindful moment. Thank you.